this is a long-awaited meeting. Hodgson did get into some hot water last year.
It was only a matter of time. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got America grilling Canada on our MAID program because it is so awful. We've got some updates, world news here, Donald Trump with some more stuff. With Mark Carney going over to China soon, he's making a quick stopover in Prince Rupert, talking about pipelines again. There's a bunch of stuff here. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, we've got some polling data here coming from Polaris Strategic Insights. They did a remote poll from December 5th to the 20th on separation in Canada, and well, here are the results. The question being, should the province separate from its own country? BC with 11%, Alberta with 19%, Saskatchewan 20%, and Manitoba 8%. The question I have now is, like, who did they poll? How did they do the polling? Is this going into city centers? Are you getting rural people? Is this a equal balance? Ultimately, we'll find out in the fall when the referendum vote in Alberta happens and people go to vote on it. Other news here, we've got Tim Hodgson. He's being added to the list of people going to China. Of course he is. As Ryan Garrettson pointing out here, Tim admitting that he has many CCP connections in his riding sure sounds like it. Well, Tim Hodgson posted this: I look forward to joining Prime Minister Mark Carney in China next week. As the world's second largest economy with many connections in my riding of Markham Thornhill, I know how many opportunities engagement with China presents. This trip is part of our strategy to build new connections with every corner of the globe to bring investment to Canada, diversify trade, and accelerate our economic growth. Everything about this is so slimy and weaselly. The fact that he recruited Michael Ma is going to China now with Mark Carney and Tim Hodgson. All this stinks of corruption. Moving ahead, we've got this posted from the Government Canada account here on X. Canadians love milk. Here it comes in cartons, jugs, and bags. Yep, in eastern parts of Canada, most people prefer to buy their milk in soft plastic bags. So what, plastic's fine now in Canada if it's milk and they're broadcasting this Canadian Patriot bags of milk? This is ridiculous. The government demonizes plastic producers in Canada, then they overturn their own rules so they can make plastic bags for America, but now they're bragging about milk in plastic bags. You can't make this up. I thought this was interesting. Brazilian president claims Carney condemns U.S. force in Venezuela. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva claims Prime Minister Mark Carney privately agreed to condemn American force in Venezuela during a Friday phone call. That's nice of him to share that publicly. As this guy's saying here, as usual, Mark Carney says one thing in public and another in private. Of course, that's what Mark Carney does. Moving ahead, we've got Donald Trump with this one, saying he will acquire Greenland whether they like it or not.
I'm not talking about money for Greenland yet. I might talk about that. But right now, we are going to do something on Greenland, whether they like it or not, because if we don't do it, Russia or China will take over Greenland, and we're not going to have Russia or China as a neighbor. I would like to make a deal, the easy way, but if we don't do it the easy way, we're going to do it the hard way. And by the way, I'm a fan of Denmark too. I have to tell you, and they've been very nice to me. I'm a big fan, but the fact that they had a boat land there 500 years ago doesn't mean that they own the land. I'm sure we had lots of boats go there also. But we need that because if you take a look outside of Greenland right now, there are Russian destroyers, there are Chinese destroyers and bigger. There are Russian submarines all over the place. We're not going to have Russia or China occupy Greenland, and that's what they're going to do if we don't. So we're going to be doing something with Greenland, either the nice way or the more difficult way.
Yep. I don't know, offer the people $1 million a piece, see what happens. WW3 is closer than we think. Russia is a neighbor of America. Alaska is only 53 miles away. That is true. It's just across the water there. We also got this one from Table Salt I thought was interesting. He says, the job market is so bad. He's posted jobs. And so far, 3 qualified candidates have offered to work for around half of the market rate. That is very sad. And he goes on to say here that he'll pay the market rate. But I mean, people are desperate. It's so bad. Got this one here. New CFIA livestock traceability rules coming from the federal government, making life more difficult for ranchers in Canada. We've got changes will include mandatory computer reporting within 7 days of movement. I believe this is currently 30 or 60 days, so 7 days is pretty aggressive. Veterinarian appointments, community pastures, cattle shows, carcass disposal, on-farm disposal, all births and deaths of animals. Basically, as it says here, this affects large-scale producers right down to small acreage owners that have fewer animals. I mean, on larger farms, they have people dedicated to tracking animals, using software and all that, but on small farms, they do not. So this is once again just more bureaucratic bullcrap from the government, making Canadians' lives worse. Moving ahead, we've got Donald Trump with a post here saying that essentially America is screwed if the court overturns the tariffs. He's saying that they'll have to pay back trillions of dollars. And well, to sum all this up, we should know by earliest on Wednesday. Might be a bit later, but this is going to be huge. I mean, there's all sorts of moving pieces here between Iran, Greenland, Venezuela, China, Russia, and then you've got these tariffs in here, not to mention all the craziness with the ICE and Minnesota, Somali scandals. While we're talking about Somalia scandals, you have to check this out. This is so unbelievably outrageous. People from Somalia who got American taxpayer money laundered to them by the government were found fleeing in the airports trying to go back to Somalia with the money. $700 million.
Developments in Minnesota. We're going to turn our attention back to the Somali fraud investigation. As we've discussed before, authorities have discovered suitcases containing hundreds of millions of dollars in a Minnesota airport. Now, in the meantime, Republicans are working to cut funding for Somali-led organizations with alleged ties to the massive fraud scandal. Now, as the FBI pushes forward with its own investigation, one key question arises. What does accountability even look like in this case moving forward? So joining us.
This is so unbelievably outrageous. Just suitcases filled full of cash. Sometimes I make the joke, but it's literally suitcases full of cash. Just rampant corruption. And this was all blown up because of a YouTuber. And in some other world news here, we've got this: Mercedes moving manufacturing from Germany to Hungary. Net zero will cost Germany big time. That's right, a German manufacturer in Mercedes, a German company, is now moving a lot of its production to Hungary, where costs are cheaper. Now, there is this going around here saying 20,000 job losses, and looking into it comes from this Remix website here, which does say 20,000 Germans set to lose their jobs. I can't confirm this as being fact, 20,000, because it only comes from this one website. We do have Reuters here saying that Mercedes to move A-class production from Germany to Hungary. So this is happening. 20,000 job losses doesn't seem to be verified, but either way, this is net zero, pushing more car companies out of these woke countries like Germany. Germany is one of the only democracies I can think of where if you criticize the government, the cops will show up at your house. Sounds like a fun place to live. Moving ahead, we've got this one from Mackenzie Gray. Mark Carney's headed to Prince Rupert tomorrow to meet with BC coastal First Nations to discuss a potential oil pipeline and the MOU that Carney signed with Alberta back in November. Ministers Tim Hodgson and Gregor Robertson will be joining Carney. This is a last-minute trip here. I think Carney is panicking. He knows that he can't get his undemocratic majority, and now he doesn't know what to do. And maybe, are we going to see a pipeline? Because if he doesn't do it, he looks like a scoundrel who isn't a man of his word. Polling shows that majority of Canadians are in favor of a pipeline. It only makes logical sense. What is Carney going to do?
Well, this is a meeting with coastal First Nations that those Indigenous groups have been asking the Prime Minister for. And it will be, as you mentioned there, on his way to a larger international trip in China as well as Switzerland. And the Prime Minister's office says there will be a number of topics discussed with BC Indigenous leaders, including major projects. The PMO is saying that it will be to ensure that these projects are built sustainably and in partnership with Indigenous peoples, as well as marine conservation and ocean protections. Now, joining Prime Minister Mark Carney will be Energy Minister Tim Hodgson. This is a long-awaited meeting. Hodgson did get into some hot water last year, near the end of the year, for saying that he could meet with these leaders virtually. And this, of course, comes on the heels of that memorandum of understanding that Alberta signed with Ottawa, which Indigenous leaders were not part of. And that proposal, as part of that memorandum of understanding, to build an oil pipeline potentially from Alberta to the west coast of BC. This is something that coastal First Nations oppose. They have raised concerns over.
That's not true. They don't oppose it. There's a couple activist First Nation groups who do oppose it. The majority of First Nations approve of this. We know this because there was already majority approval years ago when this project was already proposed. More propaganda from the CBC.
And concerns that this potential pipeline could see the lifting of the oil tanker ban on BC's coast. So a very important meeting for coastal First Nations, one that they have asked long for, and one that Prime Minister Mark Carney will be having with them tomorrow.
Curious to see what comes of this. Is Mark Carney going to flip-flop and actually start to open this up and build a pipeline, but only if there's a Pathways project net zero? I'm curious to see, is he going to pivot because he knows he's getting wrecked in the polls right now? He keeps coming out with stuff like, oh, methane emissions, this, that, and the other, like things that nobody cares about, but things that will make him rich. Canadians are starting to get a whiff of who this guy really is, and well, I don't know. We'll see what happens here. While we're talking about greedy shills, we have Donald Trump Trump coming out with this. Please be informed that we will no longer let the American public be ripped off by credit card companies that are charging interest rates of 20 to 30% and even more, which festered unimpeded by sleepy Joe Biden administration unaffordability. Effective January 20th, 2026, I, as President of the United States, am calling for a one-year cap on credit card interest at 10%. Wow, that's incredible. That will save a lot of people a lot of money. He is coming out swinging here with policy after policy after policy. And we've also got another one here that Trump has come out with, announcing that the military budget for 2027 should not be $1 trillion, but $1.5 trillion, bringing it up to, I believe, about 5%, saying this will allow us to build our dream military. So this guy's take here is interesting. He's saying Trump is about to bankrupt China the Soviet way. He just set up a Soviet-style trap for China. Trump raising defense spending by 50% to 1.5 trillion, then saying this isn't about Russia. Russia's economy can't keep up. This is aimed squarely at China. It's Reagan versus Soviet Union version 2.0. Beijing now faces a dead-end choice. Match U.S. spending, crush an already fragile economy. China's economy is hurting right now pretty badly. Don't match it and fall behind militarily and lose face globally. Not to mention if they have plans here, which they keep saying they do, to take over Taiwan, well, they're going to fall behind. They won't be able to do that. I don't know if they really will. They're a bunch of cowards. I mean, the way that they basically attack other nations is they're sending in the street fendels, paid protesters, all this kind of garbage attacking from the inside. So he says either way China loses. That's exactly how the arms race bankrupted the USSR, and that's why Beijing is panicking about this decision. Now, the only thing that doesn't line up with this theory is China is much more wrapped into the global economy more than the USSR, so they're more stable that way. But I do see there's some legs to this. I mean, we look at what Trump just did with Venezuela. He wants a bigger military because he's making big moves, and he'll still be around in 2027 as president of the United States. So perhaps he has other things on the horizon he wants to do with a bigger military. Moving ahead, we've got quite the nasty story here. So this one going around, HHS officials calls Canada's assisted ending of existence fueled organ donation strange new horror. They're talking about the MAID program. Coming from this article here on the Washington Examiner, Deputy Health and Human Services Secretary Jim O'Neill condemned Canada's permissive physician-assisted MAID program for all ill patients, which he has said has crossed ethical boundaries by increasing deceased organ donation rates. It's like they're using this as a way to increase organ donors. It's disgusting, really. O'Neill, the second in command at HHS and acting head of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, told Washington Examiner in an exclusive interview that he was disturbed to learn that Canada's physician-assisted MAID program, operating under the label medical aid in perishing, has enabled it to become the world leader in organ transplant policy from deceased donors. Demand from the millions of patients worldwide who need an organ transplant greatly outpaces supply, leaving organ donation policy ripe for perverse incentives. In the United States, an average 13 people die every day waiting for an organ transplant. O'Neill and Health Resources and Services Administration Chief Thomas Engels have said that they're trying to revive trust in the American organ procurement and transplantation network after multiple troubling reports of organs nearly being harvested from live patients in several states, including Kentucky and New Jersey. Ugh. But O'Neill said that Canada's program was uniquely problematic compared to even the most egregious stories in the United States. We thought we'd seen all possible horrors, in America, and then Canada has this strange new horror that is really just shocking, said O'Neill. It goes on to talk about the different organ donor rates here. It says the number of organ donors is still relatively small compared to the nearly 16,500 Canadians who died by physician-assisted MAID program in 2024. Canadian Health Services reported in November that roughly 60% of MAID participants in 2024 had cancer, which in most Canadian provinces would preclude them from choosing to donate their organs upon perishing. Goes on to say state laws on physician-assisted MAID program are much stricter than those in Canada, where the National Parliament next month will review whether patients suffering from mental illness can choose MAID. In Illinois and elsewhere in the U.S., 2 physicians or healthcare providers must certify that the patient has less than 6 months to live before choosing physician MAID program. This is absolutely deplorable. And you notice here that it says next month to go on to choose whether mental health can qualify. So with all of that said, we've got this story going around of this 26-year-old being ended for being sad. I can't say this word on here. Technically in Canada, the government can't end someone for being sad yet. This is up for review, as that article said. And we can see that here, February 29th, 2024, extending the exclusion for MAID eligibility, blah, blah, blah. And it says here, eligibility for MAID for persons suffering solely from mental illness within 2 years of the bill receiving the royal assent. That's by March 1st, 2026. I believe they'll start reviewing this, and by 2027, they'll make a decision on it. Now, it does say here, if we look at the bill, an act to amend respecting end-of-life care, it says right here, the bill provides that a person cannot request MAID for mental disorder other than a neurocognitive disorder. So you have to have something else going on, and that's what's happened with this guy here. His name is Keanu Vafanian. He was 26 years old. I found his obituary here. So he had diabetes, he had vision loss, basically blind in one eye, and also mental health. He was struggling badly, and his mother didn't want him to go, and the government approved it. A doctor approved it, which is pretty sick. We can see the mother's post here. With a broken heart, I'm sharing that my baby boy Keanu passed away. I can't read this. Passed away on December 30th, 2025. 4 years ago here in Ontario, where we were able to stop his ending and get him some help. He was alive because people stepped in, and he was vulnerable, not capable of making a final irreversible decision. Tragically, the Canadian system later allowed something very different to happen in Vancouver, where a doctor named Ellen Wiebe approved his perishing based on mental illness. This approval occurred despite the ban until 2027, as I just mentioned. This is Canada now. This is disgusting on every level, and I promise I will fight tooth and nail for my son and other parents who have children that suffer from mental illness. Taking a closer look here at who Ellen Wiebe is, who approved this, Melissa posted another bombshell here. Looks like Dr. Ellen Wiebe, who just ended that young man in BC, and 400 other patients, seems to be the leader of this abortion pill clinical trials. This seems very sick and twisted. So her name right here, Vancouver Dr. Ellen Wiebe, who's running the Canadian clinical trials. This doctor has helped more than 400 patients perish. Imagine being 72 years old and being responsible for perishing so many people after have already lived that long. There's no words for what's going on in our country. She's admitted to over 1,000 at a talk I was witness to on Salt Spring Island. The comments in here not too kind to Dr. Ellen.